We just, we had someone that was in our house, evidently, and they stabbed somebody.
Okay, somebody's inside the house now?
I don't know, we heard...
Are they bleeding? You see someone bleeding?
Someone is bleeding in our house.
Okay, where's they bleeding from?
I think in the stomach.
I got 3 homosexuals in a house, and I got 1 straight guy. What's he doing over there? What is he doing over there? I think we're all drinking wine. You know what's going to happen tonight? You're coming to Jesus tonight. That's what's going on.
That's fascinating and insulting and offensive.
Here we
Gather round, all you seekers of the night. Welcome to Patrick's Dark Corner.
On a quiet August night in 2006, Robert Wone, a young and promising attorney, walked into a friend's townhouse in Washington, D.C., seeking a place to crash after a late-night meeting. What should have been a routine overnight stay turned into one of the most perplexing and chilling mysteries of the 21st century. Was it a burglary gone wrong, a sinister betrayal among friends, or something even more disturbing? The story of Robert Wone is one of unanswered questions, bizarre evidence, and a case that leaves even the most seasoned true crime fans shaking their heads. Tonight we'll explore the strange details, conflicting stories, and the haunting legacy of a case that refuses to rest. Let's dive into the case of Robert Wone. Before we get into this video, I want to give a shout out to whomurderedrobertwone.com. The website was started in 2009 by a group of men who lived in the area where Robert was murdered. They didn't know anyone involved in the case personally, but were intrigued by the case. The website is a treasure trove of evidence, case details, and media coverage. One of these guys has a YouTube channel with the full interrogations of all the suspects. I will link all their information in the description. Robert Eric Wone was a man who, by all accounts, lived a life of integrity, kindness, and achievement. Born on June 1st, 1974, he grew up in Chinatown, Manhattan, then went to Xaverian High School in Brooklyn, New York. His parents, William and Amy, were third-generation Chinese immigrants. Robert was really proud of his Chinese heritage and would write essays like, "What does it mean to be Asian American in today's society?" Robert graduated high school as valedictorian. When Robert was touring the College of William and Mary with his parents, Robert met Joseph Price for the first time.
Robert and his family were on a tour with me. I was a college tour guide at William & Mary, and they were on my tour.
Robert attended the College of William and Mary as a James Monroe Scholar seeking a degree in public policy, then law. Robert was not only studious, he was very involved in campus life. He was a member of the Honor Council, he was active in the Asian American Student Union, and he was deeply involved in student government, serving as student body president his senior year. It was through all these activities that Robert became friends with Joseph Price, who was a senior when Robert was a freshman. Robert and Joseph developed a close friendship.
And he, slept on the floor of my dorm room.
Joe was closeted at this time, but that wouldn't have mattered to Robert, who was all about equal rights. Robert and Joe were both part of this secret society called the Seven Society. Membership to this secret society is extremely selective, and most of its operations are kept secret. But it's not known for anything sinister. In fact, it is known for philanthropic efforts. They often made anonymous donations to student causes. After graduating from the College of William and Mary in 1996, Robert Wone pursued a career in law, marked by his dedication to public service in the Asian American legal community. He attended the University of Pennsylvania Law School, earning his Juris Doctor degree. After graduating, he worked at Covington & Burling, a prestigious Washington, D.C. law firm specializing in intellectual property and regulatory law. 2 years into his career, he attended a conference in Chicago. At the conference, he met Kathy Yu. Kathy was a lawyer, too, based in Chicago. The two began a long-distance relationship that moved pretty quickly. In 2002, when Robert proposed to Kathy with a silver fortune cookie containing the message, "Will you marry me?" within a year they were married. Robert's college friend Joseph Price attended the wedding with his partner Victor Zaborski. Kathy moved out to D.C. to be with Robert, and they lived in Fairfax County, Virginia. a short commute to their jobs in DC. Robert was really street smart and had 2 wallets, one of which was empty, to trick muggers. Robert and Joseph Price, they remained in contact. Robert's 30th birthday was hosted at Joseph's place. In fact, days before the incident,
I saw his wife recently. I saw her like on Monday. She got a new job herself. She just had like hip replacement surgery, and she got a new job working right across the street from me. So she, Robert, and I actually all tried to go to lunch together last week, and Robert couldn't do it, but Kathy and I went.
By August 2nd, 2006, Robert had just started working in the legal department of this company called Radio Free Asia. Radio Free Asia RFA is a U.S. government-funded nonprofit organization that broadcasts news and information to countries in Asia with restricted press freedoms. Anyway, that night, Robert planned to stay late at work to introduce himself to the night shift crew. Robert talked to Kathy about how he would have to find a friends to crash. First, he asked a female friend who lived in DC, but she was unavailable. His old college friend, Joseph Price, had a room for him to stay in at his luxury townhouse at 509 Swan Street in the DuPont Circle area. By this time, Joseph was an attorney and a prominent gay rights advocate. He served as the general counsel for Equality Virginia, a gay rights advocacy group, from 2002 to 2006. Additionally, he was involved in high-profile gay rights litigation. And Joseph had a business matter to discuss with Robert that night. Joseph didn't live alone in the house, though. He had a domestic partner of over 10 years, Victor Zaborski. Victor Zaborski was a marketing professional who worked on the Got Milk campaign. Also living there was Joseph's boyfriend, Dylan Ward. Unlike the other two, Dylan did not have a fancy job. He worked odd jobs as a massage therapist and fundraising. Yeah, these three had an interesting relationship. Joseph and Victor had a normal semi-committed relationship for over 10 years. I say semi because Joseph was having sex with a neighbor too. Joseph had a sexual relationship with Dylan Ward. They had a kinky S&M relationship with Dylan as the dominant and Joseph as the submissive. Victor didn't have a relationship with Dylan. Joseph had tried to make that work, but the sparks weren't there. Also living in the basement was tenant Sarah Morgan. Sarah was sleeping at a friend's house for the first time the night of the incident. Sarah Morgan is often overlooked in this case because she wasn't there that night, but she was friends with all the men, especially Victor. She would later testify that she was the eyes and ears for Victor, who had become jealous of Dylan's relationship with Joseph. She also said Dylan once told her that he was going to be the new Victor. So Robert arrives to the Swan Street residence at about 10:30 p.m. Less than 2 hours later, something goes horribly wrong, and Victor Zaborski calls 911.
DC Emergency 911 operator 6752. Do you need police, fire, or ambulance?
Immediately. We need an ambulance.
What's wrong, ma'am?
We had someone that was in our house, evidently, and they stabbed somebody.
Okay, somebody's inside the house now?
I don't know. We heard.
Are they bleeding? You see someone bleeding?
Someone is bleeding in our house.
Okay, where's they bleeding from?
I think in the stomach.
In the stomach? Is he cautious? Calm down for me. I'm going to send some help, okay? Female or male?
It's a male. He's a friend of ours. He was spending the night with us.
Okay, and who was the person that stabbed him? Do you know? Is he conscious?
We need an ambulance.
Ma'am, listen to me.
He's not conscious.
He's not conscious at all?
No. We need someone right now.
Is he breathing? Listen to me. Calm down. I'm going to help you, okay? Is he breathing?
I'm upstairs, and he's downstairs. I don't know.
Okay, who's downstairs with him?
My partner is downstairs with him right now. He told me to go upstairs and call the police immediately. I just went to the stairs.
Okay, who's the person? Okay, I'm sending paramedics and the police. Okay, who's the person that stabbed him?
I don't know. We think it's somebody with an intruder in the house. We heard the chime at the door.
And it's 15, ma'am, calm down. 1509 Swan Street Northwest, am I correct?
Yes, it is.
The person that stabbed him, is she still in the home?
I don't know.
Okay, we got help en route, okay?
Pardon me?
We have help en route.
Thank you. They're here.
They are en route to you now. I'm saying the police and the paramedics, okay, to assist. Okay, what I need you to do is go downstairs, okay? The place wherever he was stabbed at, I need you to get a dry cloth, okay, and just apply pressure to that area. If he was wherever he was stabbed at on his body, I need you to take a towel downstairs while you're waiting for the paramedics to arrive, and just apply pressure. Even if the rag or towel is saturated with blood, just get another towel and put it on top, but never lift the first towel off the area. Hold it on. Once it gets filled up with blood, just put another towel on top of that and just apply pressure until the paramedics arrive.
Pressure until the
Yes.
paramedics on the leg.
Yeah.
With stab in the heart.
In the heart?
Yes. In the center of his chest.
Okay. Is he breathing?
Is he breathing?
We have help en route now, okay? You don't know who it was?
I have no idea. So don't touch this. Like,
okay, is he breathing?
he's breathing, but he needs help now.
Okay, we have help en route, ma'am, okay? We do have help en route. Okay, just go down there and try to tell your husband or your the other half to just try to keep him calm and talk to him, okay? Keep him calm and talk to him until someone gets there.
Okay.
And at the same time, get a dry cloth and just hold it right there in the area.
My partner's holding the
Okay,
holding it on him.
Okay, and once it gets saturated with blood, tell him get another one. Go get another towel so you can apply it on top of that one once it gets filled up with blood. We need you to apply pressure on that area.
He is applying pressure right now.
Okay, just hold it there until the paramedics get there. They should be pulling up any moment if they're already en route to your location. You don't know who did this.
We have no idea who did this.
Is the door open so they can get in?
We don't know how they got in.
Okay, well, I'm asking you now, is the door open so the paramedics can get in once they get here?
What? Sorry. What were you saying?
Is the door open so they can get in? Is the door open so the paramedics can get in the home?
I'm going to go down.
Is this a private home or apartment?
It's a home.
It's a home. It's 1509 Swan Street, Northwest.
The person had one of our knives.
The person that stabbed him ran out the door with a knife?
I think.
Okay, anybody get any type of description of the person that came in the
I
home?
have no idea. We have no description. We heard the chime, and we heard the scream from our friend.
Okay.
And so we came running downstairs. We ran in.
So you both was upstairs and your friend was downstairs?
Yes.
You heard the door open and then you heard the scream?
I didn't hear the door open until after the scream, and then we ran down the stairs and we heard we have an alarm, and so the chime went off.
Okay.
Is the ambulance? Please, we really need the ambulance.
Okay, they en route now, ma'am. Go to the door. They should be pulling up any moment. Okay.
I'm afraid to go downstairs.
Okay, the person who's downstairs was the person that was assaulted.
No, we're on the second floor.
Okay, so somebody need to go downstairs and open the door for the paramedics. You're not sure if that person's still in the home or not.
I have no idea.
Okay, we have paramedics en route, okay?
What time is it?
What time is it at the moment?
Yes.
23:54. It's 11:54, ma'am.
11:54.
Yes.
I mean,
I'll stay on the line with you. I will stay on the line until somebody gets here, okay? I won't hang up.
we need them right now. I'm not hanging up, but we need help now.
Okay, they're en route, ma'am. They are en route. Let me know when you hear the paramedics. Can you look out the window and see if you hear them coming?
I'm looking out the window and I see nothing. I see nobody.
Okay, it seems like forever, but they are en route, ma'am. They're coming.
Here they are. Here they are.
They're there.
I'm going downstairs.
Okay. I'll stay on the line with you till you open the door for the paramedics, okay?
Help us. We have someone was stabbed. They're on our second floor.
Ma'am?
No, it's really an emergency. I mean, he maybe Please hurry.
Ma'am, it's gonna be okay.
So, when first responders arrive, Victor answers the door wearing a bathrobe with his hair slicked back like he had just taken a shower. The paramedics ask Victor what is going on, but Victor just breaks down crying and ignores their questions. So, paramedics go to the second floor where they encounter Dylan Ward in the hallway. Dylan is also wearing a bathrobe with his hair slicked back. Dylan calmly motions towards the guest room before going back to his bedroom and closing the door. Paramedics go to the guest room and find Robert lying on the bed. On top of the covers wearing a gray t-shirt and gym shorts with a night guard in his mouth to prevent himself from grinding his teeth in his sleep. Joe Price was standing next to the bed with his back turned to the paramedics. As the paramedics moved closer to help Robert, Joe stepped aside, but kept his back turned to the paramedics. He looked like he had just showered too. As the paramedics approached Robert, they noticed 3 stab wounds on his chest, including a large wound near his heart. Shockingly though, there was very little blood. Paramedics asked Joe what happened, and he just says, "We heard a scream," then walks away. Paramedics note that Joe had not tried applying pressure to Roberts' wounds and did not do any of the things the 911 operator instructed. Paramedics get freaked out at this point and start getting scared one of the men would kill them too. One of the holes in Robert's chest is so big, fingers can fit through it. Yet his clothes are clean. It seemed like whoever killed Robert then showered and redressed him before placing him in the bed. There was no blood on the bed either. One paramedic said the hair on the back of his neck stood up. Paramedics noticed a bloody knife on the nightstand next to Robert's bed. They noticed a bloody towel on the floor. As paramedics put Robert in the ambulance, they noticed surgical incision wounds on his chest, like when a doctor administers drugs. So Joseph Price calls Kathy Wone to tell her that Robert had been stabbed and she needed to get to the hospital. By the time she got there, though, it was too late. Robert Wone was pronounced dead at George Washington University Hospital shortly after midnight. So when cops get to the house, Joe Price, the attorney, does most of the talking. He tells police officer Diane Durham that they had heard the chime on the back door and ran out to find Robert bleeding on the patio. They took him upstairs to the guest bedroom to call 911. Cops are sketched out. Nothing in this expensive house full of valuables were taken. Robert's watch and BlackBerry are right next to him on the bed, and nothing seems disturbed. The men claim that when Robert got there, they went to the kitchen and had small talk.
We talked about his wife, we talked about our friend Lisa, we talked briefly about his job. Joe talked about the shower breaking. We talked about it being really hot in his room. It was just chit-chat.
Then they say Robert went to the guest room. Joe and Victor said they watched Project Runway and went to sleep. They are awoken by a scream. Robert and Victor ran downstairs to find Robert stabbed. They said they saw Dylan in the hallway. Dylan says he went to his room after the conversation was over. He says he took a sleeping pill and went to bed at about 10:30. He says he awoke to Joe and Victor screaming and went in the hallway.
I saw Joe was in the room with Robert, sitting there, telling Victor to get the ambulance, and Victor was on the phone. So I don't know if Victor was in the room or just like kind of blocking the doorway. I don't know.
They all say an intruder must have broken in through the back door and killed Robert. They all deny knowing anything and say the others aren't involved. Cops ask if Robert was gay. They say he isn't and is happily married to Kathy. At this point, the detectives don't do themselves any favors, and they repeatedly express disbelief that a straight man could have gay friends.
Joe is homosexual, right? Is Robert homosexual?
Not that I know of. I've never thought of him as homosexual. He has a wife. I don't.
But you
I
know
never
that.
once
But
thought-
you know that there's homosexual people that
Yeah,
also
but-
have wives, right?
I never got any sort of vibe. I never got.
No.
any sort of-
I understand. I understand. It may not be from Rob, but I'm saying that you know that there are homosexual that's also not married, right? I mean, come on, everybody.
Yeah,
knows
no,
that.
of course there are.
Everybody knows that.
But I never suspected. I mean, I never would've thought.
Did you ever suspect maybe Rob or maybe Joe may have had feelings for Rob? You never suspected. Have you ever suspected him?
I never once ever expected it. No.
Do you have any straight friend that you knew in high school that you are right now friends with, or right now having any type of contact with?
Any what friends? Just any friends?
Any straight person that you knew from high school?
Sure.
Are you constantly in contact with them?
No, we're in contact. You know, when I go home to Tacoma or in Friday,
Okay.
and I see them.
But are you constantly in contact with them as far as email, as far as letters, or meeting their wives, meeting straight guys? I'm not talking about other homosexuals. I'm talking about guys that are straight, that you know that are straight. Are you constantly in contact with any of them?
No, I'm not constantly in contact hardly with any friends.
I got 3 homosexuals in a house, and I got 1 straight guy. What's he doing over there? What is he doing over there? I think we're all drinking wine. You know what's going to happen tonight? You're coming to Jesus tonight. That's what's going on.
That's fascinating and insulting and offensive.
During the interview, Joe blurts out that his fingerprints will be on the knife since he moved it to help Robert. He said they probably wouldn't find the killer's fingerprints though because he probably wore gloves. The men stick to their intruder story though, even as the detectives try to trip them up, saying one snitched on the other. Joseph is arrogant, Victor is quiet, and Dylan is calm but believable. Back at the house though, detectives search around the back gate, which is locked and shows no signs of forced entry. The intruder would have had to scale the 7-foot fence, however. The fence is covered with undisturbed cobwebs and pollen, suggesting there was no intruder. The detectives continue grilling the men till the sun comes up, but none of them break. Eventually, the men storm out of the interview.
Yeah, I need to go, and I would like to see Dylan. You know, we've been here a long time.
Okay, you can certainly go. I'm just going to shut this just
Uh-huh.
for a second. You can certainly go. You don't have to stay here, obviously. As far as seeing Dylan, you can't see him here.
Okay. Well, he, I'm sure, would like to go. His attorney's trying to reach him. You know, we're done. I don't know if he's being told what his rights are, but I suspect not.
So on August 4th, Robert's wife, Kathy, is devastated and grieving with friends at her home. Joe, Victor, and Dylan come by to visit Kathy. They asked to speak to Kathy alone in the basement for about 30 minutes. When she came up, she told her friends that she believed the 3 men were also victims of the intruder who killed Robert. Kathy and a lawyer friend went to talk to detectives. Joe Price called the lawyer after, wanting to know what Kathy told the detectives. So even though Kathy believed the men, some of Robert's friends were already having doubts about the intruder story. Joe was actually a pallbearer at Robert's funeral. It was at the funeral that Robert's close friend, Jason Torchinsky, asked Joe, "How are you sleeping at night?" Joe just shakes his head and looks down. He doesn't say anything. Then, in September, the Seventh Society at William and Mary, where Robert went to college, decide to have a vigil for him. Robert's family asks Joe and Victor not to come. Meanwhile, investigators get the results of a polygraph test given to Dylan Ward the day of the interrogation. He failed. The 2 questions on the test were, "Did you kill Robert Wone?" and "Do you know who killed Robert Wone?" Deception was indicated on both of Dylan's answers to the questions. On August 3rd, Robert's autopsy was performed by Dr. Lois Goslanowski, the Deputy Chief Medical Examiner for Washington, D.C. One of the first things the doctor notices is 3 perfect slits in Robert's torso where he had been stabbed. The slit marks were so perfect, it looked like a surgeon had done them. All the slits had the same depth, width, and orientation The perfection of the slits indicate that neither the attacker nor Robert moved. This is super strange because it is natural human instinct to move and defend yourself while being stabbed. Yet Robert's hands and forearms had no defensive wounds. There was also a blood clot in Robert's small intestine, meaning he was still alive for a time after being stabbed. The doctor wondered if maybe he was tied down and that was why he didn't move, but there were no ligature marks on his body or any sign he had been restrained. So maybe Robert was knocked out with drugs and that's why he couldn't move. After all, there were those needle puncture marks on Robert's neck that I mentioned earlier. There were also needle puncture marks on the back of one of his hands, as well as on his ankle and feet. Samples from Robert's blood was taken and sent off to be tested for paralytic drugs. Most shockingly, there was semen on Robert Wone's lower abdomen, groin area, and inside his rectum. This heightened suspicions that Robert was the victim of a sex attack, so the semen was also sent off to be tested. As detectives awaited the results, they kept Joe, Victor, and Dylan as their main suspects. They knew this and quickly lawyered up. Joseph Price quickly hired high-profile defense attorney Bernie Grimm. Victor and Dylan also hired high-profile defense attorneys. As news about Robert's murder spread, the community seemed confused. After all, Joseph Price and his domestic partner Victor Zaborski are prominent members of DC's elite society, especially the gay community. Joe Price served on the board of directors for Equality Virginia, and was a big advocate for gay marriage, which was not legal at the time. Joe and Victor were sperm donors for a lesbian couple, which led them to be featured in USA Today. 72 hours after the murder, detectives go back to the house on Swan Street. As they examined the knife found on the nightstand next to Robert's bed, they started to believe the knife was staged and not the real murder weapon. The kitchen knife found at the scene was a partially serrated 10-inch blade from the house's kitchen. However, Robert Wone's stab wounds were described as clean, precise, and surgically smooth. The knife found on the nightstand seemed too long to have caused the wounds on Robert. The wounds were about 4.5 inches deep, while the blood on the knife was up to 5 inches deep. Also, there were no t-shirt fibers found on the knife, which would be expected if it was the murder weapon. Here was, however, fibers from a bloody towel found on the floor. The blood pattern on the knife was consistent with it being wiped down with a towel. The knife of the nightstand came from a cutlery set in the house's kitchen. So, perhaps the most interesting discoveries came when detectives searched Dylan Ward's bedroom. They found hundreds of sex toys. And they weren't just any toys. There was a large set of BDSM equipment. Everything from whips, chains, and cages to hardcore torture devices, like electro-torture devices and a gas mask that locked up. Most shockingly, there was a set of knives found in Dylan's bedroom. One of the knives was missing from the set. Detectives thought the missing knife from Dylan's set was more consistent with the wounds on Robert. Police found ecstasy in the house. When they searched Joe's computer, they found hundreds of sexual BDSM images with Dylan as the dom and Joe as the sub. Joe had a profile on alt.com where he went by the screen name Kolokit, which detectives theorized was a reference to ketamine, the date rape drug. On Joe's alt.com profile, he said he was into electro-torture, sensory deprivation, medieval torture devices, humiliation, power exchange, and shackles. All this indicated to detectives that Joe and Dylan were into the more extreme aspects of S&M and inflicting pain. Detectives' minds raced with what all of the sex and drugs meant for Robert's murder. Maybe Robert was knocked out with ketamine before he was attacked. Did they torture Robert? Even though there were no ligature marks on his body, if anyone knew how to restrain him without leaving marks, it would be these two. But when Robert Wone's autopsy results came back, the results were shocking. The semen found around Robert's genitals and in his rectum It was Robert's own semen. No one else's DNA was found. Drug tests on Robert came back negative for everything too. There was no ketamine, nothing that would knock him out, and no paralytics to incapacitate him. These results didn't change the detectives' theory much though. They said that an electronic sex toy found in Dylan's room could have been used to make Robert ejaculate in his sleep. Paralytics usually dissolve quickly in the body. Just because we didn't find any paralytics doesn't mean they weren't administered, the medical examiner said. At the end, though, Robert's DNA wasn't found on any of the sex toys. Joe's lawyer said that Joe and Dylan's intimate life had nothing to do with Robert's murder, and it was just a sensational theory from the detectives. Meanwhile, detectives noticed a load of sheets and clothes in the laundry machine. It looked like sheets and clothes had been washed before detectives arrived. Detectives suspected that the sheets and clothes were bloody, but any trace of blood had been wiped away by the machine. Investigators searched the plumbing for any signs of washed away blood. They used luminol, a chemical that detects blood, on the bathroom sink, shower, and drain pipes, but found no conclusive traces. Some believe the housemates may have used bleach or strong cleaners to remove evidence. In Dylan Ward's room, detectives found a book, Pain and Precision, was a BDSM guide focused on controlled pain techniques. Some media reports say detectives found evidence Dylan had a fetish for Asian men. Still, with no evidence directly linking the men to the murder, detectives turned their attention to someone who had a key to the house. This was Joe Price's little brother, Michael Price. Michael was gay too and had an arrest history for beating up his partners. He was also a drug addict who Joe had been bailing out of trouble for years. Just a month after Robert's murder, Michael was caught trying to burglarize the house on Swan Street. Most interestingly, Michael Price was training to be a phlebotomist, which means he was learning how to draw blood and work with needles. Given all the needle marks on Robert, this made him a suspect. Michael was attending college at night and had perfect attendance, but on August 2nd, the night of the murder, he was marked absent. However, Michael's partner said he was with him the night of the murder, and Michael's phone records put him with his partner nowhere near Swan Street. It was another dead end. For the next year, the investigation went quiet. About a month after the murder, the Swan Street house was put up for sale. Dylan moved to Florida. Joe and Victor tried living in a different DC house for a bit, but finding themselves shunned by their friends, they quickly joined Dylan in Florida. They all remained together. Meanwhile, Robert's wife, Kathy Wone, was left devastated. She was finding it difficult staying in the house she shared with Robert. She was barely able to get out of bed because she was so depressed. She didn't care if the bank foreclosed on her house. She moved in with a friend. She started seeing a Christian grief counselor, and by November she was able to start working again part-time. The bank didn't foreclose on her home, so in April, Kathy and her new dog, Buddy, moved back into the house she once shared with Robert. She was still confused about Robert's murder, though. She wanted to believe the men. They were her friends too, but her doubts started growing. So, in September of 2007, Kathy held a press conference with her high-profile lawyer, Eric Holder, demanding answers.
Last but not least, I have a few words for the individual who took Robert's life. A countless number of friends, colleagues, and family members from all over the country have been shaken to the core by the tragic and senseless loss of such a young and promising life. While dealing with my own share of paralyzing sadness, I realized that I also grieve deeply for the loss of your own life. Having a murder on your conscience is no small load to carry as you try to live, I imagine, as normal a life as possible. Confessing will be the hardest thing that you'll ever do in your life. Our laws will impose severe consequences, but it will also be the most freeing thing that you can do for yourself. A secret like the one you are hiding from the world will only grow heavier with time.
On November 24th, 2008, Dylan Ward, Joseph Price, and Victor Zabrowski were arrested and indicted on obstruction charges in Robert's murder. Prosecutors didn't have enough evidence to charge anyone with Robert's murder, but they thought they had enough evidence of the men covering it up. The men hired the best lawyers, who filed a motion to get any mention of BDSM or sexual misconduct suppressed from trial, and it worked. The men decided to have the judge rather than a jury decide their case. The defense brought in famous forensic scientist Dr. Henry Lee, who worked on the O.J. Simpson trial, John Benet Ramsey case, and many others. Dr. Lee testified that Robert bled mostly internally, and that's why there wasn't a lot of blood. Dr. Lee examined the knife found at the crime scene and testified that the blood patterns were consistent with those typically resulting from a stabbing. He indicated that the smears observed on the knife could occur during a stabbing motion, suggesting that the knife could indeed be the murder weapon. He analyzed a towel found in the guest room where one was killed, identifying significant blood stains. Dr. Lee opined that these stains could have resulted from the towel being used to apply pressure to one's wounds, aligning with the defense's narrative that efforts were made to aid the victim. Dr. Lee testified that he found no indications of the crime scene being staged or evidence being tampered with, countering the prosecution's theory that the defendants altered the scene to mislead investigators. The prosecution brought in their own medical examiner to support the prosecution's theory. Prosecutors also said that the real murder weapon was missing from the cutlery set in Dylan's bedroom. They said someone used that knife to kill Robert, then got rid of it. At trial, though, defense brought in Dylan Ward's mother. The mother said she mailed Dylan the cutlery set as a gift, but she removed one of the knives from the set and kept it for herself. So that is what happened to the missing knife. On June 29, 2010, Judge Lynn Leibovitz delivered her shocking verdict. Not guilty of obstruction of justice, conspiracy, and tampering with evidence in connection with Robert's murder. Judge Leibovitz stated that while she believed the three knew more than they admitted, the government had not proven the charges beyond a reasonable doubt. Kathy Wone filed a civil wrongful death lawsuit against the men, but the lawsuit was settled for an undisclosed amount in 2011. Kathy Wone stated she was choosing to settle to avoid re-traumatizing herself and those close to her through another lengthy and painful trial. These days, the family of Joe, Victor, and Dylan has broken up. Joseph Price changed his name to Joseph Anderson and lives in a Miami suburb. He works at an immigrant advocacy group. Victor Zaborski moved back to Washington, D.C., where he works at the same marketing firm. Dylan Ward changed his name to Dylan Thomas. Dylan lives in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and works as a Pilates instructor at Pure Pilates. He also got married. It seems the men have kept whatever happened to Robert a close secret. The most popular theory is that Dylan killed Robert after sexually assaulting him, and the other helped cover it up. In the documentary Who Killed Robert Wone, Joe Price's lawyer said if he had to guess, Dylan did it. Another theory is that the men accidentally overdosed him on a drug while trying to knock him out and assault him. They staged the stabbing to cover it up, and that's why Robert didn't bleed much. Others think Joe may have killed Robert after years of hiding his feelings for him. There are still others who believe the intruder's story. The day after the murder, a housekeeper at the house next door came up to police to show them she saw a foot indentation in the sandbox in the backyard of her house near the fence. But she said that the cop brushed her off, saying, "Don't worry about it. We already have the people involved." Others speculate that Robert was secretly gay or questioning, and his murder might have started off as a consensual encounter until something went horribly wrong. However, there is nothing to support Robert being gay or questioning, and some find this theory offensive and rooted in stereotypes. In the end, all of the theories have holes. Nothing makes sense. Maybe that is why this is such a perplexing mystery. But I'm really curious, what do you think happened to Robert? Personally, I think the stabbing was a cover-up for something else. But let me know what you think in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I will see you soon for another video. Bye.
In the darkness, where secrets hide, there's a corner where the truth resides. Gather round, all you seekers of the night. Welcome to Patrick's Dark Corner, where things come to light. Patrick's Dark Corner.